Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And boy, I hope you're having a great week. Oh, pardon me. Good coffee this morning. Hope you're having a great week. Hope your week goes well. And I hope you're enjoying this series on the feast days of Israel. Now, this morning's video is going to be, it's absolutely directly related. And it's an issue that I'll be developing a whole lot more as we continue in our series, but it's one that I want to introduce at this point to serve as almost a foundation for some of the things that we will say a good bit later. And yesterday I established the fact every one of Israel's feast days, and yeah, we call them Israel's feast days, but they're the Lord's feast days. They're the feast days of the Lord. All of the Sabbaths, not just one, all of the Sabbaths were Sabbaths unto the Lord. Sabbaths of the Lord. Therefore, any attempt to delineate between the Sabbath of the Lord, i.e. the seventh day, and Sabbaths of Moses, maybe. And I've had some individuals say, well, you'll never, ever, 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 ever see the Bible talk about the Sabbath as the Sabbath of Israel. Well, it's a feast day, and it's a Sabbath, and it's a feast day of Israel. Now, is it being specified? No, but it most assuredly is being described, since, once again, you can't miss the power of this, since the seventh day is a feast day, and they are the feast days of Israel, then the seventh day is a Sabbath of Israel. Let me say this again, ever so kindly, with all due respect. The attempt to make the seventh day feast day more critically important than any other feast day is totally misguided. I've already described that and demonstrated that by the fact that, okay, you have the Sabbath, you violate Sabbath, you die, and Yom Kippur, you violate Yom Kippur, you die. That demonstrates an absolute equality in importance. And no amount of obfuscation, no amount of verbal gymnastics is going to change that fundamental fact. Okay, so I want to shift gears here. Because as we proceed, we're going to see, and we're going to be discussing the question, did the law pass? Well, once again, we're confronted with the argument that says, well, the law of Moses, the ceremonial law, it passed away. But the law of God did not pass away. Now, I can't help but remind you, the law of God described the feast days as the feast days, all of them as the feast of the Lord. So just from the get-go, it's completely improper to speak of the law of Moses as somehow on lesser standing, lesser value, lesser importance than the law. So how would we go about establishing the proper identity of the law? Well, we can look very simply at the way the term the law is used throughout the Tanakh, throughout the Old Testament, as well as the New Testament. We could go, for instance, to Deuteronomy chapter 28, all the way through chapter 32. After giving what we today call the law of blessings and cursings, over and over and over, it is simply referred to as the law. Okay, so if the law of blessings and cursings, delineating, and by the way, folks, let's not forget this, okay, that the law of blessings and cursings, in saying if you keep the law, you will be blessed. If you violate the law, you'll be taken out of the land, you will be accursed, and you will die in a foreign land. the curse of violation for the law or blessing for keeping the law is not restricted to the Decalogue. Period. You cannot find one single word in Deuteronomy chapters 28 to 31, and we'll talk about Deuteronomy 32 at another time, but you cannot find one single word in Deuteronomy chapter 28 to 31 that imposes a curse on Israel for violation of simply the Decalogue. Now, as I pointed out yesterday, the Decalogue is, without any question whatsoever, the fountain from which all of the rest of the laws flowed, upon which they were based. But violation of these other laws would lead to exile, would lead to death. So this is absolutely critical. When we understand that the law of blessings and cursings was not a law to bless just for the keeping of the Decalogue, and it was not a law of blessings and cursings strictly for violation of the Decalogue, then all of a sudden, just as I pointed out in regard to Yom Kippur, that puts the totality of God's law to Israel, all of it, on equal footing. No difference. You violate, you die. And let's keep in mind what Paul said in Galatians chapter 3 and verse 10. All of those who are under law are under the curse. But as the law says, cursed is everyone who does not continue in all things that are written in the book of the law to do them. Well, that's probably point number one. Probably, it's a little bit, it's difficult maybe to pin down precisely, but it may be a reference directly to Deuteronomy chapter 28 to 31. But it most assuredly is not a reference exclusively to the Decalogue. So here's Paul saying, cursed is everyone that does not continue in all things that are written in the book of the law. Now, to my knowledge, maybe somebody could correct me on this, and that's just fine. To my knowledge, the book of the law is never used exclusively of the Decalogue. It is another one of those comprehensive terms to speak of the entirety of the law given by Yahweh. So we have Deuteronomy chapter 28 to 31 referring to the law as the totality of Torah. Well then, and look, we could go to Joshua chapter 8, which is an absolutely fascinating passage. I'll bring it up later, I'm sure, Deuteronomy 8, 31 and following. But for the moment, let's just, because of time constraints here, let's just come forward to John, Jesus in his ministry. In John chapter 12 and verse 32, the Jews accosted Jesus, and they have said, we have read in the law, no modifications, no qualifications, no limitations. We have read in the law that Messiah abides forever. How then can you say, if the Son of Man is lifted up, you will draw all men to him? We have read in the law that Messiah abides forever. Well, I'm telling you what, folks, you can read the Decalogue day and night, and you will not find a reference to Messiah abiding forever. Where might we find in the law the concept, the idea, the statement that Messiah would endure forever? Well, we might go to Psalms chapter 89, 34 to 37. The word has gone out of my mouth. I will not alter the word that has gone out of my mouth. I will establish the throne of my son, or the seed of David, on the throne. I will establish it like the sun, the moon, and the stars, and shall never pass away, is the point of the passage. Oh, wait a minute. The law said Messiah would abide forever. Psalms said Messiah would abide forever. Therefore, the Psalms are the law. Furthermore, in Romans chapter 3, Paul quotes from the Psalms no less than 4, maybe 5 times. In Romans chapter 3, beginning with verse 10 and continuing on down. And he says, now we know that whatsoever the law says, it says to those who are under the law. What law is he talking about? Well, he quotes from the Psalms. Therefore, the Psalms are the law. Not only that, consider what Jesus said in Luke chapter 16 and verse 16. Jesus said, pay very careful attention here, please, the law and the prophets prophesied until John. Since then, all men press into the kingdom. Some try to take it by force, etc. What did Jesus say? The law prophesied, and the prophets prophesied. Well, wait a minute. You can read the Decalogue, once again, all day long. Thou shalt not steal. That's not a prophecy. Thou shalt not murder. That's not a prophecy. 6 days you shall work, but in the 7th you shall do no labor at all. Now, if somebody wants to say, I hope they would, well, the Sabbath foreshadowed and typified eternal rest, salvation, resurrection, I am going to say wholeheartedly, amen. Because we're told by Paul in Colossians chapter 2, 16 and 17, that the new moons, feast days, and Sabbaths, plural, were, when Paul wrote, shadows of the good things that were about to come. I had never, until some comments on YouTube, heard anyone, never read anyone, including Samuel Bakioshi, in his massive tome, Sabbath to Sunday, never read anybody say, well, 6 of the feast days were typological of ultimate salvation, but not the 7th day. What? 7th day is the fountain from which the others flow. So, why is it not a type? Why is it not a shadow? Now, I have asked for documentation for that claim, and to my knowledge, I haven't received a word in response. So my challenge is, if you or anyone that you know denies that the 7th day Sabbath was a type and a shadow, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow. If you know of anyone, if you know of any historical source, if you know of any scholarly source that denies that the 7th day Sabbath was a shadow of the ultimate salvation, resurrection, then provide that documentation. Okay? But be prepared. Number one, I don't believe that. Number two, I don't believe there's any evidence whatsoever for it. But I remain open. Okay, so in other words, Jesus said, the law prophesied. Okay, so if the law prophesied, and that's speaking of Sabbath, the 7th day Sabbath, then we've got a real problem in Colossians chapter 2. When it is argued that all the ceremonial feast days were nailed to the cross, well, wait a minute. Seventh-day Sabbath was a ceremonial feast day. You see how everything starts going round and round in a circle here? There's no such delineation as attempted to make. But back to the point. The law prophesied. Jesus said, until heaven and earth passes away, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass from the law until it is all fulfilled. Well, how do you fulfill the law? Well, you fulfill the law by meeting its moral requirements and seeing the fulfillment of what the seventh-day Sabbath anticipated and foreshadowed. This is about to get good. Okay, now listen, in regard to defining the law, okay, don't forget this month's 2-book special, absolutely going to save you a ton of money, right? The End of the Law, From Torah to Telos, Volume 1, and my book, The Resurrection Feast Fulfilled, an examination or study of Israel's last feast day, i.e. Sukkot. Pardon me. And in this book, I document from passage after passage after passage from both the Tanakh and the New Testament. And folks, I haven't even touched the hem of the garment this morning and sharing with you just a couple of verses here, in which the Bible refers to the totality of the Tanakh, all of it, from the Pentateuch, the Decalogue, to the Psalms, to the prophets, to the wisdom literature. The Bible refers to every single element as the law. Never, ever does it make a distinction between the law of Moses versus the law of God, as if they are in any way counterbalanced with one another. So, take advantage of the February 2-book special, okay? Total delivered price is $36 for the rest of February 2024. U.S. orders only. I cannot do this for out of country at all. So go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and there's a wonderful banner there. Just click on it. This book will demonstrate to you that the distinctions that are attempted by those who insist that we keep Sabbath today, that those who insist, that insist that we keep Torah today, are completely misguided. Doesn't mean anybody's evil. It means they're misguided. Okay? Take advantage of the special offer. You'll be glad that you did. I'm out of time. I'll see you on the flip side.